doing here right now. And I also don't really know anything about the topic, so I'm just going to say hi, do the housekeeping stuff. Let's go with the next slide. Oh, I'm here. Sweet. Okay, right, learning. Welcome. So oh my God, I can hear myself on my computer. Will you go mute my... Sorry, I'm watching the live stream and in the live stream at the same time. Sorry about that. So as you can see, here's the agenda. We're just going to do a little introduction, which I'm muddling through right now. And then we're going to move on to Dan's talk. And this is can I say this is the first time that you're doing this talk this evening? So equally, all the good vibes that you're sending me, please send to Dan as well. And I spoke a little bit about Silicon Brighton. I've only been with them 4 months or so, but so far I've been really blown away with how not tight the community, because it's a very vast community, but everyone's really engaged, everyone's really helpful. And so I would recommend getting to as many of these meetup groups as you can, because you're always bound to have a good chat and you're always bound to learn something. Yeah, that's kind of all I can say about it at the moment. If you would like to get involved with any of our groups or speak at any of our groups, or maybe start your own group, then get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Alexandra. You can find me through the Silicon Brighton page. Let me think, is there anything else to say? Oh, we also have a Slack group, but I'll talk to you about that at the end. And none of this would be possible without our members. So the way that we work is we're a community-led initiative. We're a not-for-profit, essentially. And so we have members that pay like a subscription service every month, and they get to have their... I'm here. Sorry, I keep forgetting. And then they get to have their name on the project, and they get to benefit from some of the member benefits that we have within Silicon Brighton. But without further ado, let's get on with the main man. Come on down, Dan. Thank you so much for coming here this evening. I'm excited to see this. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, it's really nice to actually. I think I remember like a few years ago being here, like thinking, like, oh, you know, maybe I could do that one day. I never really thought I would, and now it's my job. It's very weird. Anyway, so my name's Dan Conn. I'm a developer advocate for a company called Sonatype. We essentially have a lot of tools around dependency management and supply chain management. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to talk about a project that I've worked on kind of for 5 years. Well, not worked on, actually, no. I've used for 5 years. Unfortunately, with some open source, you don't contribute to the things you use. I think I made one commit once, which is really bad. I should actually kind of give back to that. But it's about a project called Apache Tika. Has anybody used Apache Tika here? No one. Wow. I would wage that's different. If you were to probably look somewhere in your dependency chain somewhere, you'll find Apache Tika if you've ever needed to extract text. And funny enough, we've got a tool called Bomb Doctor, which will visualize a dependency, which you could probably do that. If you look for there, that'd be pretty good. Anyway, a little bit more about me. Okay. So I've worked I worked Sonatype. I worked as a developer for 10 years. I've written in different languages, Java being the main one. Equally as long, cybersecurity. I got hacked 3 months into being a developer. That's why I learned about cybersecurity, because realizing that doing instant response on the job is, you know, it's not fun really, actually. It's very stressful. I'll share these slides later, and yeah, all those links, please do say hi on any of those channels. I'm definitely not an Australian rugby player. That's another guy called Dan Conn. He's actually younger than me. He should change his name by now. I'm going to create a campaign at some point. So, what is Apache Tika? So, as not many know, Apache Tika is actually one of many things. It's a Swiss Army knife, really. It basically has text extraction, mime type detection, and also can surface metadata. There is a fourth that I thought I'd added on here, which is quite a new function, which is language detection as well. So based on the corpus of text, it can essentially make a very good guess as to what your language that it's written in, as in speaking language, not a computer one. That one's much easier. So essentially, you kind of use it whenever you need to extract text or, you know, find some information about a particular file. Now, you know, if you think about that, that's quite a lot of probably the use cases in the world, which is why I would wager that somewhere in supply chain it probably is used. So getting on to what actually it is. Well, it's actually quite an old project. It's been around since 2007. 3 people wrote it, Jerome Charon, Chris Batman, and Yuka Zitting. It was originally part of a project called Apache Nutch, which is anyone familiar with that? No. So Apache Nutch is a web crawling project. It's had a really huge aim of crawling the whole of the World Wide Web. And it's still kind of doing that. They've kind of gone off the huge goal because I think other people have got there before them, hence Google. But they still kind of go on. But the really cool thing about Apache Nutch is it's actually written by a guy called Doug Cutting, who, if you're familiar with kind of extraction of text, that name will be incredibly familiar because it's the guy that wrote Lucene, which is also the engine which is behind Apache Solar. He also helped write Hadoop, which is used in pretty essentially the reason for Hadoop is to basically make search on a massive scale, which is what it does, clustered search. So this is another part of the puzzle. So Tika originally was part of Apache Nutch to help crawl the web and extract all the text from it. And then they realized, well, actually you can do a lot more, In particular, there was a few years ago, does anyone remember the Panama Papers? It's a huge expose around how different companies operate within Panama, not Panama specifically, but the majority of them were in Panama. I think you had Forbes, The Guardian, New York Times, loads of different journalists kind of came together to basically expose this. Tika was a very important technology in that because essentially what you can do is automate extraction. And when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of documents, this is the perfect use case for Tika. So kind of what is it? Well, it's basically split into various different parts. If you're going to try to extract text, it's not just one part. You have a parser, you have a content handler, you have metadata, and you have a detector. The parser, probably self-explanatory for this audience, it's the actual nuts and bolts of trying to work out what a file is and get information from it. Now, a content handler is a bit more of an esoteric kind of subject. I'm not 100% sure what a content handler is, I'll be honest. You just need one. But what it essentially does is provide heuristics to Tika and say, well, look, here's how you handle content. Here's what we want you to do in X circumstances. And along with the parser and metadata, they will work it out. So then you have a metadata object. And this is essentially a place just to store metadata. And that's kind of all it does. It's not really like a main issue. It's not really a working part of the function. But all of these things work together. So you basically you create these objects, then pass them into the parse function of Tika whenever you want to extract text. Now, the other part of it is detect, which you have Pore Detector all on their own. Unfortunately, it's just not, you don't need the other things to use it, right? So if a bit unfamiliar to a subject, what is a detector? Well, essentially it's to do with detecting file mime types. And the more accurate your mime type means that actually parsing it later will be much useful. I don't know if anyone's actually dealt with file types, different mime types, and kind of what they are under the hood. But essentially, oh no. Yeah, okay, we'll talk about text extraction then, because that's you'll find out later about file forensics. But for now, let's talk about text extraction. So essentially, you have the metadata element, you have a content handler, and you have a parser. And what they do is they work in conjunction to metadata will be a place where metadata is stored within your file. And a parser will act on that based on what they find. I've just realized we do need to talk a bit about this because I've just realized that I've just got them around the wrong way. So file forensics is, essentially all a file is a string of bits, right? We know that. However, different file types have a different structure around their bits. So one in particular is docfile. Has anyone heard of that magic MIME type? It's any Microsoft file will begin with D0 C Foxtrot 11E, which essentially is I think that's the old type Microsoft file. Actually, I'm not sure if it's the new Open XML types, but what that does is that will indicate that it should be a Microsoft Office file, and that's the best way of figuring out how it is now, because it will be in the first few bytes. Different files, JPEG, for example, has another one, which is like 894A, I think. You have various files within the bytes, and then beyond that, you'll have some information on how to process that file. So it could be the next 16 bytes are some, further header information, instructions. It'll tell you how many blocks of data it's split into as a file from, an nth token, which then will say, right, from here is actually your contents of your file. But before here is just some setup information, a bit like kind of an operating system does, or any other kind of software. You need to tell it how to be processed. So because this information is available, this is what Tika basically does under the hood. In fact, it does many things. What it can do is, it can look for this information, or it can, try and second guess what's under it. So second guessing about it is, for example, which is a really bad one, extensions. So .text, .doc. Yeah, if you actually feed that to Tika and give it a string as opposed to let it do what it should do on its own, it will come back and tell you that whatever you've put as the extension is actually what the file type is, which, because hackers never change that, right? Every doc file that you receive in an email, or every PDF you receive from DHL of, mypersonalhackersite.com, that's always legitimate PDF, right? So you can see already the problem with kind of using that as a forensic. Furthermore, if you let, if you give absolutely no help to Tika, you kind of got to realize that other files can be hidden within files. So, for example, you start as a zip file, and it has, the initial bytes of a zip. So, what do you do now? Like, how does it know then that the next file, where the next file is? And yeah, zip has a specification. That's how you know. But what if there's something pretending to be a zip file that is actually a file embedded that's actually malicious, right? Now, there's the beauty of kind of file forensics is that, you can kind of cater for this problem within what's called a Tika config file. Now, Tika itself will just extract text out of the, so it knows about what the zip format is. It knows about different packages. It knows that actually Office files, how many of you have embedded an Office file inside another, spreadsheet in your web document, or spreadsheet within your, can't remember anything to do with Microsoft doc file. Really bad, sorry. But it's something you do without thinking about it, right? But actually within the structure of this is that you have doc file, and then you have, here's some data, and then you have another doc file, then some more data, and somewhere it will say I'm a spreadsheet, and inside me I'm a doc file, a Word document, and inside me I'm another part. Inside me I might be a graph, which is a completely different MIME type, right? But essentially what they're considered by Tika and other extraction tools, they are containers. So you need to be aware of these different things that, you can have things that hide inside you. You can have WAV files that hide inside containers. You can have, exe files or macros, and that's where then you get the dangerous things, right? So by inserting a macro that is malicious, or it might call out to, your favorite crypto miner. It might call out to, insert any kind of thing that you might want to run and you might have allowed it to run. And that's essentially what files forensics tries to stop it doesn't try to stop, but at least the detection of Tika can allow you to make decisions on this. So now we've kind of established that files can hide within files. Let's talk about text extraction. So essentially, text extraction is knowing all of these kind of heuristics around file forensics and being able to apply parsers when you can detect each different file. Within Tika, there are hundreds. Like, I did have a slide of listing them all, and then decided no, there's just too much information. But essentially, what Tika does is it uses in tandem the detect mechanism internally to go right at this point. This is this file, and then this byte stream sounds familiar. So we need to change the parser. So, imagine it like a car in gears. It's in first gear, which might be your open office parser, and then it goes in and goes, oh, that's a PDF in there now. Oh, let's go to PDF extract, parser and extract that text, and basically stores it in an input stream. And what you can do with that input stream is that you can take it. You're responsible for closing it. But what you can also do is you can tell it to output to text, output as a string, and then get the whole gamut of information as a string, which is quite useful. Except it forgets about this, which is very important, right? So, kind of metadata. What do we mean by metadata? It's all very meta, right? It's the process of it's basically stuff that is within your file that isn't actually content. Loads of files have it. In fact, again, Microsoft Office files teeming with metadata. This is where your author names are. Did you write something? Do you have a registered copy of Microsoft Office? Probably these days because of protection, but probably, I don't know, maybe when I was a kid, probably not. It was some kind of weird version. Sorry, not me. Other people definitely did that. But that's essentially it. Whoever that file would have been registered to and paid for it, that would be in the metadata, right? Other things you find when the file was created, when it was modified last. In fact, some files have a tree of every modification they've done, all stored within the file. Which, if you're not aware of it, if you've done something, it's actually a very good technique of some file forensics, actual digital forensics. When they inspect some files, they'll see people that have kind of tried to hide their evidence. But this metadata, it's a bit weird. Tika kind of jumps through it in its normal processing and just pulls through, detects the parsing, and goes, right, here's all your content, and it's just what you see. So that's not very useful. You can turn it on, and then that's the information you get. It's actually just much more richer. You can also find so here's we'll wait for that. Basically metadata is a very important part of the flow. So let me talk about language detection. So, as I said, language detection, it's a very new part of Tika. And it's kind of just a bit of knowledge of, it's kind of really how well computers have got at this. Tika's not an AI system, but actually based on phrasing, based on, collation of words, based on really what the work happened in the Lucene project of trying to figure out, you can actually determine what languages things are in, which is incredibly useful. What is a particular use case for it? Imagine, so I don't know if anyone's quite hot on email standards and RFCs. There's been an RFC a few years ago where they're actually talking about making emails multilingual. So if you essentially go, oh, I want to write I want an email that I know I'm going to distribute around the world. Wouldn't it be really cool if whatever locale your browser was set or your webmail client, that would actually go, oh, English or Spanish if you're Spanish, or so you can have different versions. And kind of the language detection Tika would help with that, because which one would your browser know? Unless you had this kind of like some kind of tagging system, how's it going to know? Well, or it might know on your browser, but how's it going to know, say, like if you're sending the email to somebody else or a business client, or you go through your security scanners and, you can't actually determine, what is going on. So I think that's where Tika comes in, is that, you can push this through, you can take it, and then you can throw it into Solar. You can have like some kind of search mechanism of this multilingual file and say, well, this is the Spanish part, this is the French part, this is the Italian part, this is the English part. And, they're all the same thing. You can then tag that. And, so then you're making your websites maybe multilingual if you're posting all these different things. So it's, for me, I think it's a very good tool. So, oh wow. Spicy things. Let's talk about that. And, obviously, chilies are very hot. These are Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm really sorry if you came to see the band after seeing that on the bio, but, it's just, that's all they are. There are loads of things, like Tika's normal use case is brilliant, right? It is actually an incredibly powerful tool. Like, if it wasn't, then it wouldn't have been used in the Panama Papers. It wouldn't have gone through 11.6 million documents in a very short time. And that's it. You can. I've worked, in a place which just automates, that just guzzles text out of Tika and throws it into Solar, which is essentially what the web crawler use case initially was. Right. That's why all these things exist, and that's all being good. But there's a lot of bad people in the world that want to do very bad things, or not very bad, just things that might cause you a bit of annoyance and screw up your systems and cause you to want to spend an awful amount of time at work that you don't need to be at. So what things can Tika help with? Well, actually, oh no, I'm missing a few slides, so I will talk about this. So what you can do with Tika is essentially, in its normal use case, you can get content. But what if you can get content and metadata, which you can, right? So you pull through the stuff and you can find in the metadata, like a lot of, weird information, right? So within the metadata, for example, you might find that there's something embedded in that. There might be a JavaScript alert, or there might be some kind of reference to an external XML file that they think is part of the Microsoft Office style sheet, but actually is, actually a reference to something nefarious. And that when it gets pulled in, it will pretend to be something that, and then when it's executed, you'll have all mayhem on your local system. Well, Tika can help with that, right? It can extract metadata. You can, if you have a list, say, of known URLs, you can go, oh, that's a bad one. Let's not open that. What other things can you do with Tika? Well, how about, you know that if you open in an Office file, it'll run and get the text from an Office file, right? Which has a defined structure. But what if there was something bad in the Office file that you didn't know because it's not text content? Well, what if you put it through a different parser? That's the beauty of Tika. You don't have to. It auto-detects parsers, but you don't have to actually use it that way. You can essentially go, well, so the Office parser, why don't we see what happens with the strings parser? What's the strings parser? It's really boring. It just prints strings, all the ASCII characters in something. But what I did find is a load of class names in this. Why is that there? Why is that in an Office file? Oh, okay, it's masquerading because it's assuming that this is going to be run on a Windows machine, and my extension is completely wrong. And you go, oh, okay, interesting. And these kind of things with Tika is that because it's string manipulation or it's byte manipulation, it can get the content for you and do all these things, but you can actually find some really interesting stuff under the hood of it. So then taking that further, well, you found one. What if you find on the other side, what can you do with detection? Well, our Windows problem, right? And, there are other operating systems. But, what if a file says that it's, an exe file? What if it says it's a text file, but actually you're looking at it and you can see it's an exe file, right? Well, the MIME type detector can tell you that, right? you can look for, basically, mismatches and create a system that would alert users about that and say, oh, this is an invalid file, or, take it a step further. You have SIEM systems in cybersecurity. They, like the log of log areas that you have in your, in your security teams. And essentially what you can do is, well, if you find one of these, flag it, make a log entry for that and say that these files are being, found in our system. And that's a really bad thing. So it can, you can use Tika to kind of help in your own internal security systems. What else can you do with Tika? So we have the, we have the metadata there. We have, we have the metadata. We have, what can be found as an alarm system. But you can kind of also find what has been found is steganography. So again, one thing that Tika can't do is read images, as in read text. But what it can do is that you can team it up with an OCR tool called Tesseract. And then between Tesseract and Tika, they will find loads of information. So one thing that you find is like sometimes in steganography, which is like the art of hiding a file within a file. You might find on one sweep in Tika, it finds nothing. It just finds the bits, might find some simple strings. Like, oh, why is it a random H? Why is it a random, 7, like this? Then when you're looking at the file, as in the visual one for the OCR, it might find some other letters in there. But then when you combine the two, you actually find that there's something kind of malicious or a hidden problem within a file, or something that it might be a message that criminals might actually be trying to talk to each other. And they know that if we parse both these files in a certain way, that's how we get information. But individually, they fail, right? There's nothing to detect. Another thing is that a lot of malware these days, because we have very sophisticated systems, a lot of malware can actually be found to essentially not run in certain conditions. So the initial part was virtual machines. You run malware at virtual machines to protect yourself because nobody wants malware on their computer, but they can stop. They can know that if I name something VirtualBox, they'll look for the CPU name. And if the CPU name is VirtualBox, well, they know not to run, right? But it goes more complex than that. They try and find different areas. And the main thing with that is that then the malware doesn't run in that condition. It goes through unchecked and everybody gets hacked. Great. So how can Tika help with that? Well, Tika can help with that, but because we go back to our language detector, right? Not only do they do this within a VirtualBox, but they also do it on a geolocation tool. So if they think that you're in the UK, or if they think that you're in another part of the world, they sometimes don't run it. Or they make the messaging, so for example, where they think that, in certain areas of the world, they'll have a message of, it's just a bit of spam. And then in the other part of the world, it will be something malicious. And another part of the world, it will be something quite legitimate. It will look really, really, because it's trying to evade detection. What it's hoping is that different, certain areas are known to have a bigger cybersecurity focus than others. And what they're hoping is that these systems go undetected in those areas, but they get their target payload to other places which are, which might not have like a full-on security team behind them. And things like Tika can help with that because, as I say, the language detection, you can just say, well, tell me what it is in this language. Tell me what it is if I'm in that language. And because although Tika has default detections, a lot of it is hugely manually configurable. Profanity, nobody likes the F word, fudge. Tika can help with that. If you tell it, instead of saying, oh, with the, in the mime type detector, if you say, well, basically my mime type is fudge, so look for fudge, and then every time it finds fudge, it'll go, oh, I've detected a file called the fudge mime type. Yeah, that's how it will do it, and then you can find that these profanity scores are detected. I mean, you could also do that, outside the Tika, just using the text extract of grabbing certain words that and passing it through. So I think that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. I hope you found some spicy information. I hope that you use Tika, or certainly have a look to see. These are the credits for the pictures I used. And yeah, so I hope there's some information there that makes you kind of look at it, because I'll be honest, it has saved me loads of time. One, from extraction, secondly, from mime type detection, and thirdly, just as a way of detecting threats. Do use it, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would you be open to having a question and answer? Do we have any questions in the audience? I know we've got a couple online. Okay, cool. I'm going to be the mic runner.
I was just going to say, based on detecting certain types of metadata, can you then define custom parsers based on different attributes in metadata? Or you mentioned that scenario where you were parsing the file with OCR and then also doing text extraction. Is that like a custom parser, like you've chosen to do both of those sort of things?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think the thing with the beauty of Tika is that you can actually generate your own parsers, and yeah, you can then generate your own detection within the Tika XML. To actually say, this is the thing to use for this. You can sometimes also, you might find that some of the parsers are especially PDF parsers, they're incredibly computationally expensive, and you might find if you're doing these at huge scales, that oh no, I mean not so much PDF, but if you're thinking Tesseract, that's going to use huge amounts of memory. So what you probably want to do is maybe turn it off. So what you can say is, if you detect this mime type, don't do what you meant to do. No op it. And so that way, then you're not using the memory, but then at the same time, you're not extracting it. But you might find a more efficient way. So, the other thing with Tika is, essentially it's made up of hundreds of different parsers, but they're not perfect. And, there's an argument that says, well, if, PDF box that it uses to detect, to extract PDFs isn't perfect, then we should probably work on that and improve it ourselves. But that's not always kind of possible as well. You might find your very niche use case for something doesn't comply with the rest of the open source world's usage for it, and there's no kind of nice way to make them fit together. But yeah, no, you can definitely override and use the metadata as a heuristic for that. Definitely. A lot of the metadata blob is that it's posting in information, but for example, and in fact, actually, that's a good point. A lot of files under the hood are actually Office files in the world. So you'll find something called my very specific, I'm trying to think of an example I can share, and I can't because they're all secret. But what you'll find is that a lot of kind of proprietary information is, in particular, their specific word format, or it's my secret file to store metadata about my product. They're actually Office files under the hood. So when you put them in Tika, it comes up as doc file. You're an Office file, and then you'll have people go, oh well, why are you calling my thing like this? And it's like, well, because it is, but you can't really say that. So you have to kind of think of a way of adding an extra metadata, looking in the metadata for something to then parse it to something else, which then is aware of that very custom file.
Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. How often do you use it on a personal level to protect yourself, or do you do that?
Yeah, another good question. What I've done before, so actually, I don't do it a lot, but I do look occasionally. So does anyone know of a website called Have I Been Pawned? So Have I Been Pawned uses data sets that from breaches. And sometimes when I've kind of wanted to look through, is my name anywhere? Have I Been Pawned actually does it really well, but sometimes it's you notice, oh, that old email address has been found. So then it's okay, well, let's see what they know about me in the data set. It's a great thing for that, because again, anything that you roughly know a keyword, or you just need to extract loads of data. Tika is a great example for it. So yeah, I used it. I think the thing that was most useful was one of my final year student projects was to create a neurofuzzy reasoner password detector, basically. And what I used Tika for that was just to extract loads of dictionary words and, you know, old phrases, because essentially it was trying to figure out, you know, whether a good password is. So if it's a word, like an actual word, it was probably not a good password, because that was the thinking then. It's kind of changed a bit now. But, you know, so kind of extracting the whole corpus of dictionaries or technical terms or medical terms, and, you know, it's a lot of data. And to kind of put that into a MySQL database or Postgres database, or other databases might be provided, is a way of, you know, it's just a very simple way to do that with Tika, as opposed to trying to just do the bytes all in one, because, you know, you could miss one, you'd miss the metadata, which might also find information, but, you know, you might miss the hidden aspects of a file too. Yeah, no worries.
Anyone else? No? We have. Oh, there was one on YouTube that I saw. Shall I quickly go over here? Okay. I will ask it. So this is, I think, a question and a comment from Green Deserts Now, or Green Deserts Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Or maybe I'm missing a joke there, a tech joke. No, okay, cool. It's not your personal friend of yours. Okay. Okay, so I will read what they have written. Sorry, they had Tika server once, and they have complicated the whole thing. I had to abandon a project because of their choice. Why do I have to learn Java to use Tika when there was REST for that? Question mark, exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. So you got to give him a good answer.
Oh. So, as far as I'm aware, they haven't abandoned the server. So you can set up your own Tika REST instance, and you can use Tika server. It's just not embedded. So Tika itself, when you're putting it through something, you know, Maven or Gradle, it's actually split into different things. You have Tika, so org.apache.tika, which is the whole thing. And you don't really ever want that, because it's huge. So then what you split up is into Tika core. You can also split it up into Tika parsers. You can then split it into Tika servers. And I think the REST endpoint is in the Tika servers thing. So you can spin up an instance of Tika server and use that for different languages. So the idea is that, yeah, you can use it in Python. You can use it in, you know, Julia. I think they've got in fact, actually, with Python and Julia, they have actual embedded versions that, you know, you like dependency version, you can put in the library and use it that way. But primarily the main thing is written in Java. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that you can spin up your own server instance still locally and call it via REST that way. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Is Apache Tika only useful for Java projects?
No. Yeah, you can use, I mean, the whole point is that you can, I mean, yes, it's primarily written in Java. You put it in, if you want to use it as a dependency, it is Java. But as I say, there is a Python one, there is a Julian version. There should be a REST endpoint. I'm now questioning myself after that question. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there is, but yeah, no, there should be. Yeah, so yeah, if there isn't a language specific version, then you can definitely use a REST endpoint, and well, or maybe not. Definitely, maybe pull it in and see whether that's working.
One more question. One more. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Charlie. I'm quite interested in this. I like these kind of questions. Have you found anything strange using Apache Tika over the years?
Yeah. Well, okay. So some things, yeah, I have, but I can't talk about them. But one that I can talk about was, yes, basically somebody had, like, basically, you know, so when they were kind of trying to send something, they had basically a hidden email, hidden message within a JPEG file of basically, I hate you, everything you stand for, go screw yourself, I quit. Yeah, so that was, I thought was quite a good resignation email to their boss. So yeah.
And then that concludes our evening pretty much. So round of applause, please, for Dan. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you so much. And we'll be here for another half an hour or so, or I'm not sure what the time is. I just said half an hour, but we have to be out of here by 8. That's it. So feel free to have some more pizza, some more drinks. And we've got some events coming up, but I'm not sure what the tech is saying on this at the moment. Okay, I'm just going to show you one more thing, and then you can have eat, drink, and be merry to your heart's content. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so we've got some upcoming events here with Silicon Brighton. So we've got Sussex Data Science on the 1st of March, People and Culture Club, which is an online event on the 8th of March, and then PHP Sussex at Pizza Pilgrims, which is a really cool venue, quite different from here. We have it downstairs in the AstroTurf, so it's got all like graffiti everywhere. Yeah, it's really cool. And then there's loads of screens, so the tech is like very different to this, so it's worth a try. And also we get the Pizza Pilgrims pizza, which is, for me, I love it, absolutely love it. Sorry, and then I'll carry on. So for the next meetup, I can't remember what the date is actually for the next Brighton Jug, but feel free to scan this QR code or go to siliconbrighton.com/events to find us. And this is the Brighton Slack community QR code. Feel free to scan this, or if you would prefer a different version, you can add me on LinkedIn and I can send you the invite. If you're actually, I'll just leave that up on the screen. Can we leave that for a little bit? Okay, cool. Thank you all so much, and have a lovely rest of your evening.